Does it work now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the West of England Combined Authorities audit meeting. I'd start with the evacuation procedures because they've changed. There are no scheduled fire drills today. In the event of a continuous alarm sounding, please follow the instructions of the Combined Authority staff who will guide you immediately to the nearest fire exit, which in this room is behind you at the back. If this exit is unavailable or the alarm goes off when you are at or near reception, please use the main exit doors, the way you came in. The assembly point is on Portwall Lane and you will be accompanied by a member of staff. Thank you. The following apologies for absence have been received and substitutes were notified where applicable. So I've had apologies from Councillor Emily Clark and Councillor Cass Self is substituting, and an apology from Stephen Williams, Bristol City Council. Item 2, declarations of interest under the Localism Act 2011. Do members present have any declarations of interest in respect of the business here to be transacted, please? I'll take that as a no. Thank you very much. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 7 to 18. The minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of September are attached. Do members have any matters of accuracy to raise, please? Are members of the committee content to agree the minutes as a correct record? Can I have a mover? Thank you, Toby. A seconder? Thank you, Mark. And now we move on to items from the public. Questions, statements and petitions. There were 6 petitions received by members of the public ahead of the deadline. These questions and the responses have been circulated and published on the authority's website. In addition, 15 statements were received. Thank you very much. Again, the statements have been published and circulated. Some members of the public are in attendance and will be invited to address the committee for up to 3 minutes each on the topic of their statements. And I have a list of people here. So I'd like to call Janet Ratcliffe to speak for 3 minutes against her petition statement, please.
I've just got to find my statement, sorry. Give me 1 minute. I'm writing as a long-standing resident of...
the microphone's not working? Can you move it closer to your mouth?
All right, hello?
That's right.
Okay. My main point is that Southfield does not suffer from a significant traffic problem, but these proposals will actually create one. By funneling vehicles onto a limited number of streets, the scheme risks increasing congestion, journey time and pollution. Coronation Road and North Street are already under pressure, and the banks of the New Cut are known to be unstable as demonstrated by the recent collapse on Cumberland Road. By increasing traffic on these routes, it's not only impractical but potentially unsafe, and it would damage the character of North Street, making it a less pleasant place to visit and harming the independent businesses that rely on footfall. I'm saying the one genuine improvement that we would like is more reliable public transport, but this should be in place before private car use is further restricted. Residents are losing parking spaces to bike hangars, and despite most households already having secure storage within their boundaries or indoors, installing these large number of on-street hangars in Southfield feels unnecessary when we are so short of parking spaces as it is. The current system, which allows traffic to be spread via alternative routes, works reasonably well, replacing it with a network of blockages and planters, which in other areas that become neglected and unsightly seems counterproductive. I feel strongly that the consultation survey was misleading. The design and phrasing of the questions appeared weighted towards producing a predetermined result rather than genuinely capturing the voices and experience of local residents. And for all these reasons, I urge you to reconsider the South Bristol Livable Neighbourhood Scheme and to take seriously the concerns of all who live there. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement, Janet. I'd like to now move on to Melissa Topping for her statement. You've got 3 minutes, Melissa.
Hello, good morning, thank you. Good morning, members of West of England Combined Authority. I'm here today representing the residents, businesses, community organisations and the disabled members of our community who are suffering under the current EBLN transport scheme. We are not here to debate policy, we're here to talk about a proven, immediate and unacceptable threat to life. WECA is the funding body for this scheme and we're appealing directly to you because Bristol City Council has chosen to ignore our warranted severe concerns. Our collective concerns are no longer anecdotal. We have irrefutable evidence in the form of recent Freedom of Information disclosure from Avon Fire Rescue Service. This official documentation confirms significant and persistent emergency access issues directly caused by the EBLN infrastructure. Let me be clear, the scheme poses a direct threat to public safety and the operational effectiveness of our emergency services. The time for a trial is over. The moment we receive confirmation that this scheme impedes a fire engine's response, it stopped being a traffic management experiment and became a critical liability. Previous failures, the lack of proper consultation, the documented disability discrimination, the businesses on the brink of closure, the disabled members of our community left lonely and isolated. These were severe injustices, but they pale in comparison to the legal duty of care violation we face today. No meaningful tweaks have been made. The Council has demonstrated it will not mitigate the fire services concerns. They are ignoring a proven threat to life. We keep being told they're meeting with fire services and making changes, but none have been made 4 months on from a burnt out home, 1 month on from the FOI. We still live in danger. Therefore, our demand is clear, non-negotiable and time critical. We demand the immediate and permanent removal of the EBLN scheme. WECA has the power through its funding, responsibility and its commitment to regional safety to override the local transport officers, councillors and the LN team who have allowed this situation to escalate. You must do so now. The risk is too high. Our safety is at high risk. We cannot wait for a tragedy to validate the fire services warnings. We ask you to intervene immediately, effective today. We're asking for your intervention, which will be supported by other parties, our local MP and community organisations, who are all calling for this scheme's removal. The eyes of the community are on this authority. The time is now to protect your constituents and honour your duty of care. Immediate removal, nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And now I'd like to move on to Terry Brammer for your 3-minute statement, please.
Over the past year, I've genuinely tried to engage in good faith with Bristol City Council's process, but I've been repeatedly met with incomplete answers, uncertainty, and a lack of transparency. The Council is presenting the SBLN. Here we go. The Council is presenting the SBLN on paper as a done deal. For example, a tender for the PCN system dated March 25 stated we will be implementing a livable neighbourhood scheme. So it becomes extremely confusing when the Council state implementation as fact, and then on radio state the SBLN will only go ahead if enough people want it and won't if enough people don't want it, but it yet has to be clear on what those percentages are. At the December Transport and Connectivity Committee meeting, most public questions were either unanswered, answered only in part, or deferred to unnamed future stages. Regarding connectivity, livable neighbourhoods insist on and can only be granted your funds if there are no through roads. But this would destroy connectivity and hugely damaged the working of the area. We're talking about Southville here, in spirit, in practice, and for commerce and general functioning. Freedom of information requests have been greatly delayed or outright refused. A new data collection has been launched after major decisions have already been signalled. And at Christmas, when travel patterns don't reflect ordinary behaviour, there has been no transparency. There has been little engagement with us residents. Yeah, a few councils have met a very few times with a very few residents with very little notice, offering no more than pointless tweaks. The survey was clearly biased in the council's favour, so we can have no trust in their methods of assessing the survey results. Decisions seem to be progressing without adequate baseline data and without clear evidence that the needs of the vulnerable, carers and disabled residents and those living on boundary roads have been properly understood. And when public engagement does not produce clear answers, when the council's own data is incomplete or retrospective, and when residents are left unsure and troubled as to how they will be impacted in their daily lives, it erodes trust and is shamefully poor practice. So I'm asking the Audit Committee, okay, to ensure the SPLN meets all basic standards of transparency, accountability, and evidence, so far it most definitely is not. Your valuable resources can be far better spent on what we do need, which can be achieved without squandering funds. This livable neighbourhood scheme will impose distress and difficulty for many residents. It'll cause more pollution and inevitably, because of longer journeys, more car use. It has to first appeal to and be workable for all residents. It is not. No business plan of any worth can ignore this. And so far, the council have already shown incompetence. They cannot be trusted to put your money to good and to fair use. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Terry. Next up, we have Andrew Lynch for your 3 minutes, please.
Hi, good morning. The Mayor made it clear on social media that she had a bad inheritance from her predecessor. And this past year, 2024-2025, was crucial in this legacy. So far, we've seen, firstly, an admission in the past that 2 contractors were hired in a faulty process. Secondly, an admission that the authority failed to provide details of payments in transparency data, which were, quotes, not automatically picked up by our current reporting process. Both failures of process occurred in cases that the public might find controversial. Processes, however, are overseen by human beings. Yet no questions seem to be asked of the officers who oversaw these processes. Now, I've seen also the response to my question about why I was misled on an FOI, which is number 5 on your questions this morning. And that is indicative of what's going on here. Basically, officers have told me to get stuffed and go to the Information Commissioner when my question was about what happened within this authority. The authority has a choice. It can be a proper democratically elected body that is representative of all the institutions in the West of England, or it can be a sweetie jar that's controlled by a political clique to hand out favours to their friends in the region. It's your choice. I hope you make the proper decision.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, we'd like to move on to Caroline Dunn, please. You have 3 minutes, please.
Why was it given to me shut off? Okay, excuse me. I think it would be important if I was allowed to repeat what I said, because this won't have gone on live stream. I come with I'll synthesize it there, because I come with a desperate cry for help as somebody who needs a car for independent living. I am being blocked out of things. I'm denied access. I'm being prevented from going to events. Bristol City Council have done nothing. The Green Party leader, Tony Dyer, is brilliantly sympathetic towards disabled people. He cannot run his party, he cannot run the Transport Committee, because Ed Plowden is still there as chair and John Smith is still there as executive officer front and centre, despite the March the 13th matter, where they authorised an incursion into the EBLN without knowing how much it would cost. I could not go to a violence against women event on the 25th of November, as I cannot access the centre anymore, and there are no disabled plays anyway when I do. I got to a special event in Emshed at the weekend, but only because they've not yet blocked the bridge between Arnolfini and Emshed. When they do, I won't be able to go to the Emshed again. They do lie, Bristol City Transport Committee, and they do mislead. Everything you've heard this morning is unfortunately true. They have, for example, talked of consulting Wessel, and by saying things, they've implied that Wessel are happy with things. I spoke to a senior person in Wessel on Saturday, and that person said Wessel report on the EBLN and widths for fire access was in fact very negative, and Wessel are not at all happy about things to do with the transport system. Currently, claiming that the Disability Commission has been consulted, they now suddenly include the vice chair as well as the chair. I spoke to the vice chair at the weekend. She's been vice chair since 2022. She said throughout that period, she'd never once been consulted on the road and transport issues. So this is just totally wrong. She also said, I could quote them as having said that. Effectively, Bristol City Council Transport Committee have said, as I have clearly heard in public meeting, Ed Plowden say, they do not want cars, they want to remove all the cars. But it seems that they effectively do not want disabled or old people either. But we old people and we disabled people, we balance out behaviour of the whole society. At the moment, they're turning the centre into a place for young drugs, because now a lot of people over 40 don't feel safe going down there or can't get there. They talk of EQIAs and they lip speak disability motions, but in reality, they totally ignore the PSCD and they do not care, which is why I could not get to the very important issue of violence against women and girls candlelit vigil on the 25th of November, because they have blocked me out of the centre. And finally, I have been talking to you and all the other committee meetings that I have been going to all year in connection with this event. And I would like to say that WECA are the only people who are listening. And thank you for that. And you're also the only committee meeting where I feel safe to come to, because the hostile environment generated in the Transport Committee is really horrific. Loads of personal information about me was just copied and pasted and put on the internet. And ever since then, I've been running an anxiety disorder. I've had a subconjunctival bleed due to the anxiety generated on my eyeball. These things matter. This behaviour matters. I've been talking about fire brigades. I've been talking about the possibility of major fire disaster in Bristol all year, and yet we still have, despite the EBLN trial over, for example, but it affects all of us, no changes.
You've had nearly 4
Can you
minutes,
please audit
Caroline,
the fire risk?
please.
And can I ask you finally, how many people have to die before there are some changes? Thank you for listening, because you actually do.
And I see David Redwell has entered the room. Could we have his statement, please, because he was first on the list.
You for slotting me in. Good to say thank you to her. So my point's really about audit. Things are getting better here. Let's be Stephen, things are getting better. I was very impressed with the public consultation exercise on the Bristol Bath Road corridor, and I'd like to pay tribute to Phil Wright, the bus and service improvement manager, put that together. I would like to see more transport operations staff there, Stephen, public, but it was a step in the right direction. WECA's out there talking to the community, and that's what matters. But I am still very concerned about the amount of money we are giving to First Group and Stagecoach and the accountability today. If you look at the agenda, there's a lot about and I agree with you, Chair, the city region transport strategy and the money going there. But, you know, we've had £105 million under the previous government for the bus service improvement plan for services improvements and services which are provided predominantly by First Group, Stagecoach, Big Lemon, and smaller operators. But there's no accountability to see where that money's really gone. So we don't see the contract tender prices come here. And they could come here once they've been awarded, and information about that money spent. I do know what Andy Burnham spends because I get the information. I know what Steve Rotherham spends. I don't quite know what's spent here. And these are private PLCs and one's a German bank. So we do need to be careful. And we spend £35 million with rail, Chris, and today they're cancelling trains that you're paying for to Gloucester. I don't see an audit of that. The auditors seem to zoom in on things that are not the main subject of this authority, which is the Transport Authority. Why are you not auditing and bringing back to this audit committee the money we spend on the public transport network? We hand money to Bristol City Council. I'm pleased to say you're controlling money to Bristol City Council because it didn't always look like that. They're now being asked to resubmit stuff and put stuff together. I'll say the same for South Gloucestershire and Baines and North Somerset. But we do need to understand where the money goes, what providing services. We need to understand the equality impact assessments, why we've only got one bus wheelchair space in the new buses that we paid for, and not two as the ones we had previously. So where was that done? There's more buses on the way. What are we paying for? What have we procured? And what have we agreed with First Group and with Stagecoach Red and White, which is the new company taking over for Stagecoach in Bristol, which is changing its operator's licence, which I'm not sure every member knows. So it is making progress, but there's a lot more to do. And on the North Somerset joining, well, it's just slow. There's no reports going around the councils getting that into Parliament for the orders in the Lords and the Commons. We need to get on with it before the election in 2027. And then we've got the Gloucestershire issue and the issue of the Integrated Care Board moving in the same direction. So I'm pleased with progress. I'm pleased there's lots of good things going on. The Bus Service Improvement Plan Board will meet in January when we know the new services. We must make sure we consult the public and the travelling public about those services for next April. That is crucial, whether it's North Somerset, South Gloucestershire, Bristol or Baines. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So I'd like to move on to item 5, which is Chair's announcements. I think we can do a round of introductions now that everybody's here. So my name is Councillor David Wilcox, representing Lockley's ward in the fine city and county of Bristol. Let's do members, please.
Hi, I'm Councillor Castell, stepping for Emily Clark today.
Hello, Councillor Toby Simon, Bath and North East Somerset Council.
Councillor Jonathan Hucker, Bristol City Council.
Councillor Tom Blenkinsop, Bristol City Council.
David Addison, South Gloucestershire Council.
Councillor Ben Burton, member for Frenchy and Down End, South Gloucestershire Council.
Councillor Adrian Rush, member for Chipping Sovereign Cotswold Edge, South Gloss.
Hello there, Mark Hatcliffe, independent member of the Audit Committee.
Hello, I'm Councillor John Leach from Bath and North East Somerset.
Hi, Jennifer Whitten, independent member.
Siwusi Shawalala, councillor for Central.
Good morning, committee. Pete Barber, director with Grant Thornton, WECA's external auditor.
Hi, I'm Lodi Nosidonko, external auditor. So.
Becky Greaves, Grant Thornton, manager of the external audit.
Good morning, committee. I'm Anna Costin from internal audit.
Good morning, all. I'm Peter Kern, head of audit.
James Kinane-Nealon, head of finance at the Combined Authority.
Steve Finnegan, financial accountant at the Combined Authority.
Tim Milgate, Democratic Services at the Combined Authority.
Stephen Peacock, Chief Executive, Combined Authority.
Solange Russell, Director of Finance, Investments and Commercial at the Combined Authority.
Bob Brown, Director of Law and Governance at the Combined Authority.
Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Simon.
If we might go back to the previous item, in one of the statements by Ms. Brammer, the names of people she was quoting were redacted. Now, if those people were speaking in a public capacity, I don't think it would be necessary to redact their names, and at least one of them was a councillor. So it's important that all the information people want to put before us is openly dealt with, and I don't think that redacting names is proportionate in these circumstances.
Does an officer want to come back on that one, please?
Okay, I mean, no. So we've redacted personal names for the reason that if we're publishing documentation, we don't have the consent of those individuals, then we can't publish those. So
those from the audience, I can't hear you.
So this is a matter I can deal with outside the meeting.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
I'm afraid the public do not have speaking rights. Sorry. I'd like to give a brief update about the October full committee that I attended. It was a good meeting. There was a lot of agreement in the room, and there were no long adjournments, or any adjournments, in fact, which is a positive step in the right direction, in my opinion. I'd like to remind members that committee can meet with external auditors following the meeting if they wish. A separate room is booked. This committee can be a bit a word salad of acronyms. To help the meeting flow, if people use an acronym, could they please explain what it stands for? I'll make a start with these. WECA, the West of England Combined Authority. MCA, the Mayoral Combined Authority. UA, which is a unitary authority, the councils that make up the MCA, Bristol, Baines, Bath and North East Somerset, South Gloss, and partly North Somerset, and that'll be coming part of the agenda. And also MHCLG, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and also Local Government, and CRSTS, which is the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement, and TCR, which is the Transforming City Regions. And now I would like to move on to item 6, which is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement 26-27, including the Treasury Management 25-26 monitoring update. The CITFA code requires the Mayoral Combined Authority to approve a Treasury Management Strategy before the start of each financial year. The 26-27 strategy will be submitted to the January 26 West of England Mayoral Combined Authority Committee for approval against the 26-27 budget papers. The Audit Committee are asked to endorse the strategy for approval at that meeting, together with any amendments, and to note the Treasury Management update. Steve Finnegan is going to be speaking to it.
I am, thank you, Chair. So the 26-27 strategy then is building on the foundations of the previous year and has only been updated to reflect the current economic factors, credit risks and cash flow forecasts, with the primary objective again to safeguard public money whilst generating a financial return. We are continuing to use the list of approved investment options, and counterparties within the limits remaining the same for 26-27 as last year, and we will again operate within the framework of the CITFA and Prudential Codes of Practice. All in close to forecasting the bank rates to fall to 3.25% by the end of March 2027, and we have reflected this in our investment income forecast for next year, which is 13.7 million, and that is based on an average portfolio of £325 million. Our investment balances at the end of October 25 were just over 500 million. During 2025, balances have ranged between 460 million and 511 million, with any new investments made primarily to protect the capital. Investment income for 25-26 is forecast to be in the region of 22.5 million, and that's at an average interest rate of 4.6%. I'm open for any questions on the report.
Councillor Hucker.
Thank you, Steve, for your report. Yes, the amount of surplus cash on deposit is currently going up and up. I see this now almost, well, it's over £500 million. And I just wonder what the process is for transferring this from central government. Do you have to throw it down, or do central government just transfer it to you without any process being in place? I'm sure that isn't the case, but it does seem remarkable that the combined authority has now over £500 million of surplus cash on deposit.
Yes, it does make it difficult to having the options of where we invest that level of cash. In terms of what we receive, we still receive the majority of our funding up front at the start of the year. I mean, each of the individual funding streams would have its own rules around how we spend it, where we spend it, when we spend it, and if we need to give any back. I'm not sure if I want to leave that open for Solange or James to answer that process. In terms of our own internal due diligence and what we do with that cash, again, primarily it's in our interest to ensure the capital value of those funds, which is why we invest most of it with other local authorities or redeposit it with government. The interest rates are very good. As interest rates drop, the pooled funds will obviously, those interest rates will be higher, but then that comes with a degree of risk.
Thank you, Steve. I'm still not entirely clear on the process. You said that the money is paid up front to the combined authority at the beginning of the year. So the combined authority doesn't actually apply for it. It just gets transferred directly.
Any new grants we would need to apply for. The investment fund, for example, that's already been agreed for 5 years. So we do receive those grants, £30 million each year, split between revenue and capital. The adult education grants are applied for every year. CRSTS continues over each year in the region of £25 million per quarter. There are a lot of other smaller grants, net zero and things like that regularly come in. Some of the grants we retrospectively apply for the funding after we have paid out the expenditure. We have to let government know what we spent the money on, and then they give us the grant funding. But 80% of the funding we receive is up front for the year.
Thank you, Steve.
Councillor Simon.
Thank you, Steve. What are the criteria for lending to local authorities? I don't think local authorities have got credit ratings, but would we exclude ones getting exceptional financial support or subject to Section 114 notices, or do we have criteria?
Yes, we do. We carry out our own due diligence on each of local authorities. We have a list from our Treasury advisors on their recommendations, authorities not to invest with. And any time we are offered a new investment with a local authority, we carry out our own checks, including whether they have been issued any Section 114 notices.
Thank you. Any more questions for the Treasury Management? So we have two recommendations to follow through here, one of which is to endorse the Treasury Management Strategy for 26-27 and recommend any amendments prior to being submitted to the January 26 West of England Mayoral Combined Authority Committee for approval. So does anybody have any amendments they wish to submit? No. So I'd like to move to a vote to endorse this strategy. So does anybody want to not endorse this strategy? Does anybody wish to abstain? And does everybody want to vote for? Please, thank you. That's carried unanimously. And the next part is to just note the Treasury Management Monitoring Update to the 31st of October 2025, prepared in accordance with the CITFA Treasury Code of Practice and the Treasury Management Indicators. Thank you very much. And now we move on to the MCA non-Treasury financial strategies to provide Thank you. To provide the following draft mayoral combined authority financial strategies for consideration by the Audit Committee: the draft capital strategy 26-27 and the draft non-treasury investment strategy 26-27 and the draft minimum revenue provision statement 26-27. Subject to amendments suggested by the Audit Committee, the strategies will then be taken to the mayoral combined authority committee for approval. And back over to Steve.
Thank you again, Chair. So this paper then follows on from the Treasury strategy paper and puts forward 3 other financial strategies for 26-27 for the committee to review and comment on before going to main committee in January. The 26-27 versions are substantially the same as 25-26. The non-treasury investment strategy covers the principles that the MCA will follow when making financial and commercial investments that are not covered in the treasury management strategy. This may include service investments such as providing loans or investing in equity in local businesses or joint ventures that support the MCA's regional and corporate priorities. The 26-27 paper is substantially the same as last year, except that it highlights the new investment strategy and sets out how a high-level framework for how funding arrangements are agreed in line with strategic priorities for the MCA's actual and potential investments. For example, the proposed 6.5 million loan to BTQ. Moving on to the capital strategy, this sets out how much the MCA will be spending against our own capital programme, but also by the UAs and how this is to be funded. Finally, the minimum revenue provision statement, which sets out how the MCA's policy is to set aside resources to pay off any debt incurred with external capital expenditure. Templates used for these documents are provided to us by our and ensure we are compliant with both the Prudential Code and government guidance. Again, open to any questions on these 3 papers.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? Councillor Harker.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I'm slightly confused because even though this paper does include non-treasury financial strategies, it also seems to include a lot of treasury information as well. So for example, on page 53, there's a list of treasury management investments. And I would have thought that this paper would really confine itself to non-treasury activities. I've also got a query on page 49, actually, and it says that the MCA is planning capex of 385.47 million, summarised below, but it doesn't appear to be summarised in table 1 below. So I just wondered if you could provide a bit of clarity on that, please.
Yes, it's the paper was written a number of weeks ago, and the budget is still a work in progress. So a lot of the tables within the capital strategy are TBC because those numbers are still being worked on, with the aim, well, that they will be ready to go into the final tables when the paper goes to the main committee in January, as the budget will be finalised. But the picture with the capital programme, it's still moving in terms of what we're profiling for next year and the information we're getting from the UAs. In terms of the summary of the treasury management, some of those principles and the borrowing strategy within the paper, it's a draft paper, so we can remove it to avoid any confusion. But it's just a summary within it, really, just to continue with the flow of the documents, as it's 4 papers going to committee rather than just the standalone historical treasury management strategy.
Thanks, Steve. I'm not necessarily suggesting that it should be changed, but at least I understand the reason why it's presented in the way that it is now, and also the fact that it's effectively still a work in progress.
Thank you, Councillor Hucker. Any more questions? I have a question about the. Sorry, Councillor Tibshire.
Thanks, Chair. I've got two questions. One mainly to the loan towards Temple Quarter. Can you clarify what kind of security would be in place to ensure that is kind of supported for any clawbacks or anything that may happen to that? Because I think at the minute there isn't an agreement in place yet. So can you just clarify a little bit on that? In terms of the Green Growth Fund, do you have a specific timeline in terms of when you'd expect to get the fund manager? Because it seems quite reliant on having a fund manager in place.
So James will take your first question, if that's okay. Is that the 6.5 million loan to BTQ?
So we have a maximum of 6.5 million. There's an agreed rate. The payback is ultimately dependent on the success of Bristol Temple Quarter as a project. There's a number of financial models that have been done because other parties have also put in they put in land rather than cash. So there is an element of uncertainty around when that will be returned, but it will ultimately be dependent on the success of Bristol Temple Quarter.
Yeah, I think it should be useful to understand what is the risk mitigations for the actual loan agreement in terms of just clarifying it here. Understandably, this is the draft, but I'm hoping you'd have something a bit more concrete at the next stage. Is that correct or not?
So you will see that when Abby Evans comes to present the risk register, she does every quarter. There is a BTQ risk item on there based on the fact that it's still very much work in progress and there's a number of risks around them. John Wilkinson is also here who can talk more to the risk point when we get to it on the agenda, if that's okay. Thank you. The next one you mentioned was the Green Growth Impact Fund, wasn't it? I'm going to ask Stephen to take that one if that's okay.
Yeah, just to confirm, we did appoint the fund manager several months ago. I'm not at this point altogether certain if that name is in the public domain, but obviously I'd be happy to share it if it is. Unless someone can tell me in the room or afterwards, I'll let you know. But we did appoint.
Thank you. So my question is about the table on page 52 about the affordable borrowing limit. Now, I understand that this limit is set by His Majesty's Treasury, but why is there such a massive increase in 27, 28 and 29 about the amount of money that we can actually borrow, please?
So we have spoken to Treasury just about potential borrowing requirements in the future. So they are to be worked through. So these numbers are around potential opportunities in the future. I cannot offline tell you what those potentially are, but these are just estimates at the moment and about future work that we may be doing in the future.
Well, just to say it's a facility, not a commitment. But obviously we wouldn't want to be constrained. In fact, if you look at the comparative performance of Mayoral Combined Authorities, many other combined authorities have used their flexibilities and freedoms to deliver what you might describe as more ambitious programs. So this is providing us with the ability, but not a requirement to do more and to go further.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions? Oh,
back. I just had a question on page 65, I think it is. There's in table 3, the total investment exposure for 2025 to 2027. There's a big drop between 2026 and 2027. I just wanted to understand more around why the investments were declining so much over time?
It's primarily due to assumptions around spending of CRSTS funds and early indications about what the profile of TCR money might be from DFT. So we just have reducing treasury balances at that point.
Any more questions? Points of clarification? No? Okay, so I'd like to move on to the recommendation section of this item. The Audit Committee considers the draft MCA non-treasury financial strategies for 26-27 and suggest amendments in advance of submission to the committee for approval. And this is an item that we'll be voting against. So do we have any votes against the non-treasury financial strategy? Pardon? Oh, thank you very much. Can I have somebody to second the non-treasury financial strategy, please? Thank you, Councillor Simon. And now I'd like to move to a vote. So anybody want to vote against? Any abstains? Councillor Hucker, down as an abstain. And now we move votes for the non-treasury financial strategy. Thank you. And now we make a recommendation to the MCA committee to formally approve the amended strategies. Another vote? Yeah. So I'd like to have a proposer and a seconder, please. Thank you. And I'll propose that. Any votes against the strategy? Any abstentions? Councillor Hucker. And votes for, please. Thank you very much. Now we move on to the CRSTS update. To provide the Audit Committee an update on the City Region's Sustainable Transport Settlement Programme. And Chris Salmon will be introducing that.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Audit Committee. Yes, since CRSTS last came to Audit Committee, there's been a number of changes which makes the context, I think, quite different. So, as you will know, previously, the biggest risk to the CRSTS programme was a risk of underspend. And there was the external auditors also highlighted some recommendations around governance. Since then, we have now got revised programme governance with a CRSTS board in place, and the DFT have this last summer updated the guidance and changed. The biggest change is March 27 end date isn't March 27. It is now March 29 with a requirement for projects to be contracted and committed by March 27. So in light of that, and particularly given that previously there was DFT guided us to overprogram, and so there was £90 million of overprogramming projects, and the MCA committed to ensure no detriment to schemes and underwrite the overprogramming. So in the October committee, brought forward funding from Transport for City Regions to enable the completion of those schemes, which now means each authority has additional funding to complete the CRSTS schemes, and the October committee papers sets out the details of that. What it means, the increased funding was guided by optimism bias, web tag guidance. So each authority was able to have sufficient funding to complete their schemes. And we're currently in the process of that rebaselining, where each authority is determining how those projects are getting allocations within their funding envelope. And since that last CRSTS update, we now have 19 projects that have completed their full business cases. 27 projects are therefore now in the delivery stage, which means over 50% of the funding, over £300 million of funding, is now in delivery. So that's the key update. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chris. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Hucker.
you, Chris, for the presentation. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. If a project has been approved, if the full business case has been approved, and the project has been approved by the Bristol City Council Transport and Connectivity Committee, is there any way that it can be pulled? The reason why I ask that is because I'm looking at the Stockwood to Henbury corridor, the 7-work package. Basically, when the consultation took place, 98% of people who responded to the consultation objected to the scheme. And I submitted a question to the chairman of the Bristol City Council Transport and Connectivity Committee, member forum, and I asked what level of objection would be required for a scheme not to go ahead. And basically, the indication that I received was that even if 100% of people objected to a scheme, then it would still go ahead. So under those, well, given the very large number of people that have objected, and in actual fact, I'm being contacted by many residents, many constituents who are very unhappy about the scheme, and they've had a meeting with the local MP, Kerry McCarthy, to express their objection to the scheme. Of course, the MP can't actually change the decision, but given that there's been such a high level of objections to the scheme, can the funding for it be pulled?
So, it depends partly on grant conditions, but in terms of Bristol City Council schemes, we are still they're working through the rebaseline schemes to determine which projects they're planning to continue to fund going forward as part of the allocation. So we'll have a better idea of that once that's been confirmed, whether all those schemes that you described, past full business case, continue to be funded. But we would obviously work with our grant assurance team on the grant conditions of any scheme that has been approved.
Work on part of the scheme has commenced, but work on the most contentious part of the scheme hasn't commenced. And I'm being asked by my constituents if there's any way that it can be stopped.
So we'll, as I say, when we get the rebaseline proposals through from Bristol City Council, that would be considered by the CRSTS board. And obviously, the rebaseline would get considerations from grant assurance as well.
Thank you, Councillor Harker. Councillor Self.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, but a statement, just to say, as a member of the Bristol City Council Transport and Connectivity Committee, fully welcome the revised end date to March 2029. It's been of great concern to us about having to condense the work and the possible impact in terms of keeping the city moving. Indeed, I got the number 2 bus this morning and found a few issues. So that's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Self. Councillor Tibber-Charlotte, did you have a question?
Yes, thanks. My question is more in regards with slippage management, 65 million in the last approach, and I guess I'm quite intrigued in the fact that inflation has not necessarily been considered in the new baseline. How does that work out?
Yes, certainly. So as part of the allocation of funding from the October committee report, each scheme was considered at which stage of delivery it was at. and the web tag guidance for optimism bias was considered the basis for how funding could be allocated, and therefore that does include that, where there is slippage and there is inflationary pressures, optimism bias takes into account things such as, those inflationary pressures, that you describe.
Okay, thanks. However, there's still internal capacity and supply chain capacity and governance. Most of these also raised within the risk. And all of these are issues that lead towards larger spillage, and therefore this program being quite a challenging program. I'm quite keen that this could be a pilot for how we should have better management and governance over projects, because it seems like it's really spiraling.
So obviously each delivery authority has the responsibility to manage their own projects and consider how best to deliver. And as part of this rebaseline, that is part of the case for each organisation to consider how to allocate the funding. And obviously, delivery concerns such as slippage would need to be, and the right resources to be in place would need to be considered. We obviously have provided significant top slice and revenue funding to enable the right resources to be in place. And each project can include with funding for those resources within their project budgets.
So just to finish off, Chair. So in terms of what's meant by governance, is that more to the other local authorities, or is it a two-way stream? Is it both the WECA governance in terms of its own capacity and the others? Because I'm sure there's a mutual level of responsibility between both partners. But when it's said governance, one can't put where does this governance issue lie. So can you just provide some clarity about where the governance issue and capacity lies, so it's just clear?
Certainly. So a year ago, I think it's fair to say and as our external auditors identified, there wasn't robust regional governance for the CRSTS programme, which we've now addressed. And therefore it enables that more effective regional decision making that incorporates each of the authorities. So there is a mutual responsibility on governance, both at delivery authority level and regional level.
I don't think that's answering my explicit question on, in terms of where does the governance issue lie. I think from a risk management, it's really important that we understand if 50% of the risk lies within the capacity of the combined authority and 50% lies on the other side, and those 100% means that there's an issue or they've got great capacity, or one's got 100% capacity and the other one's got zero capacity, and therefore there's an over-reliance on one and an under-reliance on one. I'm not clear where the risk in terms of the collaboration of the delivery actually sits. So that's what I'm just looking for. Maybe you'll touch this on the risk element, but I just like some clarity on.
Yeah, Stephen's going to try.
I'll try. I mean, 18 of 21 projects are being delivered by local authorities. The bulk of delivery is happening there. Accountability for successful delivery of the whole thing sits with us as a combined authority. The way we've chosen to deliver most of that is through local authorities. So wherever the bottleneck is, that is the weakest link in the chain. And sometimes it will be about our ability to provide consistent program level reporting as a combined authority, because different local authorities behave differently. They have different systems. Systems of governance and accountability vary. We haven't always been able to manage that very effectively, which is why we had a red rating. One of the reasons we had a red rating on our governance in our annual audit report, as you will know. That governance at the regional level has vastly improved. There is one CRSTS board on which sits our officers, chaired by Emma, and all of the relevant transport leads from the officer leads from the authorities. We have done a big rebaselining exercise to, as it were, put the present situation to a level of clarity and almost box it off. So Bristol knows, South Gloucestershire knows, Baines knows what they need to deliver, what their chosen schemes are, and how much money they have to work towards. That doesn't mean that the risk has gone away. because not all of those schemes are in delivery. And so there is the potential for slippage, there is a potential for cost inflation. But each of those schemes that sit within that agreed envelope at local authority level have to be managed within one budget by that local authority. What that does is mean everybody's not in everyone else's lives every day. Yeah. So we have to ensure now that at portfolio level, each local authority schemes, and there are 3 portfolios, and there's a 4th, which is of course the combined authority's own portfolio, that they all individually deliver. And if they all individually deliver, then collectively we deliver our requirement as the transport authority to government. So I think we've come a long way in the last 9 months. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. But I do think we're in a better position now as a result of all the hard work of all officers. And I would also say transport lead members as well. I think there's been a lot to commend about the last 12 months of work. Hope that helps.
Thanks for that clarification. And I guess my question is more really about ensuring that the members of the public have got clarity about what Worker controls in terms of the schemes and what it doesn't control. And in that sense, it's much easier for the public to point a finger, knowing very well that that's where it lies. Sometimes it feels, and as you can see from members of the public, they're attending this meeting, they're attending that meeting because they seem to be at most points uncertain about where to point the finger. So I think, that thing of Worker controls this and the other local authority controls that, people know where to go, they know where to point the finger, and nobody can say, no, it's the other person. I think that would just be a useful piece.
As we've seen today, they can talk to both of us because we're both accountable. So, we're a mayoral combined authority. The mayor will want to stand behind the decisions that are taken in ultimately her name when it comes to transport schemes. The detail of delivery will often, most of the time, be in a local authority. As the highways authority with all of the relevant statutory powers, we can both be accountable. We both are accountable, and the public can talk to both of us. And if it's a question of pointing fingers, I hope it's not always pointing fingers, but being clear who you can talk to. We're both available and we're both visible. And the Transport Committee in Bristol and the other UAs is, as a place for the public, just like this meeting does.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
So if I could come in here, this committee is all about assurance, and considering that we have a risk noted by the external auditors about the ability of the combined authority to deliver against the CRSTS targets, I would have expected in this report some details about the projects that actually been delivered. On page 74, you talk about 19 projects had their full business case approved and 27 projects are now in the delivery stage. A table listing those projects and the unitary authorities that are delivering them and how much money is allocated to those projects would have been extremely useful to give this committee assurance.
Yeah, we can certainly provide that afterwards. As I said earlier, in the middle of getting the rebaseline allocations from each authority. So once that's confirmed and that's been through decisions, we can then share the updated project list with the allocations and the delivery stage they're at.
And what's the timeline for that, please?
Well, we're waiting to get the final rebaseline information back. That will then be due to be considered by the CRSTS board in the coming weeks. So once that's all been decided, we can get it over. So in January, we hopefully be able to get it over to you.
I think that would go a long way to help this committee having assurance on the project. Councillor Blackensop, sorry, Councillor Nsia.
It's a similar question, touching on risk. We've got the point on the funding projects on the business case and the active travel streamlined approach, or ATSA. And it notes the first approval via the ATSA mechanism expected in December, with further schemes already seeking to follow. It would perhaps be useful to have a bit more detail on what those schemes are, and taking David's point, how they're expected to impact on the risk of delivery.
Yes, certainly. So I say, I'm conscious that obviously right in the middle of the rebaseline exercise, we will need to get those projects confirmed from each of the delivery authorities before we can know which ones will be remaining within the programme and the allocations, and therefore which ones will go through the active travel streamlined approach. As set out through the acceleration programme at the beginning of the year, the idea of the active travel streamlined approach was to enable increased efficiency in delivery by bringing forward schemes that were deemed low risk and using the value as a proxy. So we can, set out as part of that list which projects that got what allocation, which business stage they're at, and therefore any that are would be going straight to a final business case stage would obviously be included in that list. But as I say, most are now at the stage where they're either ready for final business case or in delivery already.
Thank you, Councillor Self.
Thank you, Chair. It's fantastic to see all these projects coming forward. I'm particularly pleased to see that we'll have new rail stations at Peel and Portishead and Filton and Henbury Station, thanks to our wonderful Labour Metro Mayor. One question from me is, you've got some numbers there, 27.2 million and 121 million. We had an issue in Transport Committee last week that sometimes when things are brought to tender, the costs go up. So is there any issues in terms of those numbers and any risks involved in terms of what happens when they finally come to fruition?
Yeah, so they're now on site in the Portishead line already, so which is great, doing some preparatory work. And as part of any funding risks that DfT have committed to underwrite any future funding risks, we have, as part of the committee paper that went in October, enabled future funding is in place for the Metro West schemes as part of the CRSTS scheme. So we are confident we're in a strong position for delivery. And we've got the right processes in place to have really strong, close visibility and transparency around costs, so that our officers are really keeping close with the Network Rail team as well, so that we really scrutinise every cost line.
Thank you. Any more questions? Because I have one more. No. On page 73, we talk about the allocation of £140 million from the Transforming City Regions Fund to complete the CRSTS programme. How will that money be spent, and why do we need to do that allocation, please?
Yes, certainly. So I maybe didn't make it clear earlier. Previously, the DfT guidance was that to complete by March 27, we should over program by up to 25%, so that we can spend the money by March 27. With the changing end date, we've got this additional commitment of the over programming schemes, which is £90 million on top of the original budget for CRSTS grant. So the Transport for City Regions Fund, which has now been confirmed, and DfT have said keen to see it as a rolling programme rather than an artificial end date, recognising that construction schemes can do have a longer development trajectory. So the Transport for City Regions Fund is to enable the completion of CRSTS, including those over programming schemes, to no detriment, and of course it then enabling fantastic projects to be on site. It's enabling schemes that are providing good value for money to enable the region to get around, be completed, and the ones that had already therefore been ready to go. So it's almost early delivery of Transport for City Regions.
That sounds really good. Can we have a list of those projects that it's actually going to be funding, please?
Yes. So as part of the rebaseline, each authority will confirm their full list of schemes, both from the previous core CRSTS plus the over programming. That will show all the allocations and include the total funding, which is the blend of CRSTS and TCR.
It'd be useful in the table that I mentioned previously that we have a column for funded by TCR.
Please, we can certainly include a column for the over programming schemes. And
thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to move that we do note this report on the city's regional sustainable transport settlement. Is everybody happy to move on? Excellent. So I now, thank you, Chris. I'd like to move on to the constitutional review section, please. To update the Audit Committee on the work undertaken to date by the Constitutional Review Working Group. and to seek the Audit Committee's endorsement of the drivers' feedback principles and scope of the review. And Steve Hellard will be introducing this report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm pleased to report this is the second report on the constitutional review. Sets out the scoping work that's been undertaken to date by the Internal Officer Working Group and seeks the committee's endorsement of the identified drivers, feedback, principles and scope of the review. The background to the review is well rehearsed. I've set that out in the report, but wouldn't propose to focus on that. In terms of the drivers for change, this is identified as an important preliminary step by the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. Obviously, identifying why the Constitution needs to be updated and the factors influencing that need is imperative to driving the constitutional review forward and understanding the amendments that need to be made. So the working group have therefore reviewed both internal and external drivers for the change. Those are identified at paragraph 6 of the report. So in terms of the internal drivers, the Constitution hasn't been subject to a wholesale review for a number of years now. It's outdated in some areas, not reflecting change in structure and practice. There's a lack of an adequate scheme of delegation to support agile decision making. We've now got the appointment of a deputy mayor, the introduction of advisory boards, the new decision pathway and adoption of the growth strategy. In terms of the external drivers that have been identified, those include the unitary authority's own views on areas for constitutional review. Now that was evidenced as part of the feedback received as part of the best value notice, work plan, work stream 3, which related to governance. There's also the need to address the comments in the BVN, the comments raised by the Independent Improvement Panel, and the need to meet the eligibility criteria for the integrated settlement. In terms of the link to governance, I've set those out in the report. We've obviously got the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill on its way, which will require a number of changes to be made to the Constitution. So the review will need to be mindful of and reflect that. The need to reflect the Planning and Infrastructure Bill requirement to deliver the Spatial Development Strategy, and the need to address the expansion of the MCA. So in terms of the internal and external drivers, those are the ones that have been identified by the internal working group. Moving on to the review of feedback to date, as set out in the report, that takes a number of forms. What that's highlighted in particular is the need for clear roles and responsibilities, clear accountabilities, more effective and agile decision making, including a fit for purpose scheme of delegation, and the need to review the MCA scrutiny arrangements. What the working group has also looked at is the scope of the review, and have concluded that a number of issues will sit outside the review. I've set those out in paragraph 9 of the report together with the reasons for that. So things like contract procedure rules and financial regulations will sit outside of the review. The reason for that is that those are updated annually by finance in any event. However, there will be some consequential amendments to those that will need to be made, no doubt, to reflect some changes arising from the review itself. The Members' Code of Conduct sits outside the review on the basis that we've adopted the Local Government Association Model Code, together with the complaints procedure around that. There's a recently updated media protocol, the Code of Corporate Governance. Again, that needs to be consistent with the SITFA and SOLIS framework. So there will be some amendments that will be needed to that to reflect the new arrangements. And the scheme of allowances is a matter for the Independent Remuneration Panel. So those matters have been identified as sitting outside the scope of the review. Importantly, what the working group then went on to consider was the principles of the review itself, and have settled on a number of principles, which are set out in paragraph 10 of the report. Don't propose to take you through all of those individually, but seek the committee's endorsement of those overarching principles on which the review will take place and the technical drafting will take place. The final thing that the working group have looked at is the structure of the constitution. As I've set out in the report, historically there are two possible structures to a constitution. One is a traditional modular constitution, one's a more modern thematic constitution. And what the working group have decided is that rather than label the new constitution as either of those, we want to take the best elements of both of those together with the emerging thinking around relational constitutions. So we don't propose to label the constitution, but to take the best of each of those methods. In terms of consultation and engagement of this committee moving forward, the proposal is to arrange a number of informal briefings with the committee. There is a further meeting of this committee in March. I believe that that's the last meeting of the municipal year. So we will need to factor in some informal briefings between now and then, and hopefully be in a position in March to bring some technical redrafting back to this committee for consideration. The final decision on the constitution vests with the main committee under the terms of the constitution. So seeking endorsement of the work of the working group to date, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions or clarifications, please? Councillor Tipistala.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely feels like it does need that update. So much welcome. I just wanted to check in terms of the unitary authorities consensus in terms of new roles that are kind of suggested in terms of a deputy mayor. Has that been something that's been agreed by all?
Yeah, obviously there is a statutory and constitutional requirement to have a deputy mayor.
But has the joined up unity authorities all kind of confirmed that is something that they would like? I'm just trying to establish the level of collaboration and agreement in terms of a joint vision.
Yeah, they have done, and the deputy mayor role will rotate. So yeah, they're all happy with that. And in terms of wider engagement with the unitary authorities in relation to the constitution itself, I'm speaking obviously with the monitoring officers of each of the unitary authorities in relation to the review.
Okay. In terms of the scope, I was understanding the suggestions of what shouldn't be in the scope. I'd just like a bit more clarification on at which points do you think that the contract procedure and the financial regulations would actually feed into the consultation or to the actual final proposal of this, because those are quite important considerations, mainly in terms of the audit, what do you call it, MECE principles?
So the financial regulations are updated annually every year.
Yes, no, I'm saying in part of the scope. So the scope review here has got a selection of things that are not within the scope of this. So I'm saying whilst they are updated every year, how are these going to kind of gel in together so that, you know, with the final product has actually incorporated the scopes that you've decided not to put in?
Yep. So we will, once we've agreed the new constitution, there will obviously be some consequential amendments that will then need to be made to the contract standing orders and financial regulations to make sure the two documents are consistent. So those will be picked up in the next review.
Okay. So does that mean at the point of submitting this, it will actually have all of those joined up as one document then? Would that be what you're working towards?
Yeah, that's the plan. So as I said, there will be some consequential amendments that will need to be made. So we will need to ensure that those documents are consistent with each other rather than contradictory.
Okay. Okay, just might be worth adding that. So from an annual review perspective, we should be seeking to review the Constitution, the governance elements of the Constitution, in line with the way that we currently review the contract standing orders and financial regulations, so that it is a constantly evolving document. But all of those modular elements of a total constitution all line up. We've not done that historically with the sort of governance element of the constitution. That's changing now, and we will bring these through as a package to make sure that they're all consistent across the piece in the future.
Can I just clarify that would be incorporated then into the local government statement for this committee? The annual governance statement, sorry. Good. So we do actually approve it every year. I would like to, sorry, Kaz, I can see you.
Yeah, just be interested to find out who is part of this working group. As one question. My other question would be, my screen's just gone blank, so I forget it. But I think it was section 17 about the diversity and inclusion part of it. How are you going to ensure that those sort of voices are fed into the review process?
Yep. So the internal working group is made up of officer representatives from each of the directorates within the MCA. So we've got a wide spread of officers across the whole of the organisation. In terms of diversity, equality, and inclusion, we will be working with our diversity, equality, and inclusion lead to make sure that any amendments we make to the constitution are signed off by them.
Thank you. Any more? I'd like to bring in one of the public statements that's made at the beginning of this meeting, where it was suggested that in line with the unitary authorities that is making up the MCA, that we allow public supplementary questions to public forum questions. And would the audit committee show be indicative of this change? So can I have a show of hands from audit committee about whether they would like to see supplementary questions being allowed in public forum at all mayoral combined authority committees?
Chair, you're making that as a proposal?
I'm making that as a proposal, yes.
Seconder, and then...
Yes, can I have a second? I propose that. Who would like to second it? Thank you. And who would like not to have supplementary questions? 2 votes. Who would like to abstain? 1 vote. 2, sorry, your hand up there, Kaz, I can see that. And those who would like to see supplementary questions, please. Thank you very much. I think that's there's a majority of that would like to see that happen, which brings the MCA in line with the rest of the unitary authorities that it does represent. So I think it's quite important. So going back to my script, we have to note the work of the Constitutional Review Working Party, and we also have to endorse the identified drivers, feedback and principles and scope of the review. So can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Simon, and a seconder. Councillor Hucker. And so I'd like to move to a vote. So anybody who does not want to endorse this, can they raise their hand? Anybody abstaining? And those who do want to endorse this, please. Thank you very much. So now we move on to the next item, which is the potential expansion of the West of England Combined Authority. to provide Audit Committee with an overview of the work underway to explore the potential expansion of the West of England Combined Authority to include North Somerset Council. Rachel Pikett will be introducing this item.
Morning all. I was just checking if it was morning or afternoon. We're still in morning. So this paper follows a request at the last meeting of the Audit Committee for an update on the process to expand mayoral combined authorities. As members will be aware, the Combined Authority Committee approved proposals for the potential expansion of WECA to be undertaken at their last meeting. So that work is now underway. And the paper that we provided to you sets out the process that is required for any MCA to expand, and that's a process that is set out and defined by government. So I'll just briefly run through that. So to initiate that process, an authority needs to develop a formal proposal which sets out the rationale for expansion. A decision is then required from members on whether they wish to proceed with that proposal and put that to public consultation. Should committee approve, a consultation then takes place. That needs to be a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks. A report is then produced for government, setting out the conclusions of that consultation process for them to consider alongside the formal proposal document whether their statutory tests for expansion have been met. Once the government has done that, if they are approving of the proposals, draft legislation is then developed, and then there is a further regional decision point to confirm whether there is regional acceptance of the legislation that has been developed by government. If at that stage there is an agreement to expansion, legislation then passes through Parliament, and the timing of that is at the discretion of Parliament to ensure that the legal steps have been taken to expand any combined authority that chooses to go through this process. So that's a kind of a whistle-stop tour of the process that any authority would need to go through to explore expansion. Happy to take any questions about
that. Councillor Bleckensop.
Thank you. And at the risk of asking a slightly stupid question, we've got the point that the Secretary needs to be satisfied that to do so would likely to improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of some or all of the people who live and work in the area. I assume our position is very much that this would be an improvement for North Somerset, and I assume they're of a similar mind.
That's a decision for North Somerset Council.
We have no indication of how they feel on the topic.
There are conversations ongoing between politicians that are political decisions. Oh yes, that's a good point. Their full council has approved, so one could assume that they're in favour.
Councillor Simon.
Thank you. 2 questions, slightly distinct. The first is whether it's envisaged this will involve bringing forward a mayoral election and whether financial provision would need to be made for that. And the second is, are there any other authorities, counties that are contemplating joining this mayoral combined authority, or is that now off the table?
So in terms of a mayoral election, this wouldn't require in terms of a mayoral election, this process wouldn't require an election to be brought forward. And in terms of other authorities, there's a national local government reorganisation process underway, and authorities across the country have set out their preferences for what that might look like and have submitted proposals to government.
Thank you. I have a point of clarification. On page 97, paragraph 8, that you state that the process above would take approximately 12 months to complete, including the appropriate formal decision-making gateways within WECA and North Somerset Council. When does those 12 months ticking clock start, please?
I think from the point at which we go out to consultation, should that decision be taken, roughly 12 months. It's all, government taking their time on bits they need to do and Parliament taking their time on bits they need to do are not in our control, but that is the rough timeline.
And when are we going to be going out to consultation? What's the timeline for that if everything goes ahead?
So that's subject to political decisions on whether there is a desire to proceed.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Councillor Independent Member Whitten, please. Sorry. You're next.
Sorry. I'm going to ask this as someone who's assuming not to know anything, and just ask: is there a potential business case that would be provided, or are you just providing the consultation and the feedback about the merger? I'm just trying to understand in terms of dealing with the devolution and finance that may come from that. You know, are we thinking about the pros and cons, or is this simply just going through a consultation to see if there's a reason for expansion or non-expansion? Is that, you know, that does the current community of the current combined authority have a say if they prefer to, or is it only a one-sided thing where North Somerset is the one that's saying we would like to, and therefore they can't be rejected out? So can you just clarify how this works?
Yes, so the consultation that would take place would be across the entire geography. So the existing WECA region and North Somerset, should politicians decide that they want to proceed. And in terms of the questions that would be put to the public, the proposal that will be developed is broad. So setting out kind of the rationale, the economic case, the potential implications for the existing authority areas and North Somerset should they choose to join. So it's a broad proposal that will give the public a broad set of considerations to make.
Okay, and would this come back in 6 months with a review, or would we only just hear only after that 12 months period? At which, what's the cycle coming back to audit within that 12 months period?
Sorry, can you just
clarify? So it's a 12
what you mean?
months period of consultation.
No, sorry, it's a 6 to 8 week period of consultation.
6 to 8. Sorry, you've got a 12 months process.
Yes.
Yeah. So within that 12 months process, what's the cycle that will be coming back to audit, or would you not be? Would only come back with the final result?
Sorry.
We can come back whenever audit wanted to come back. So there's a forward plan item at the end of the agenda, so we can add it at that point. Okay.
Thanks for reference. Thank you.
And Independent Member Whitten, please.
In relation to the other potential expansion options, are they being considered independently of North Somerset? Are they seen as either or? Are they being considered together? For example, if there was legislation being made for this, would the legislation be solely for North Somerset, or would it take into account the other options?
But by other options, do you mean other areas?
Yes.
So it's for other areas to other areas have set out their preferences for local government reorganisation. This process would be purely around the potential expansion to incorporate North Somerset.
Okay, so if there were other interested parties in the future, those would be completely independent.
If that process were underway, that could be covered by legislation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions or clarifications needed? I'd like to suggest then we note that report, please. Thank you very much, Rachel. And now we move on to the internal audit update. This is an in-year update and progress report of the internal audit work for the financial year 2020-25-26. And Peter Can will be introducing this report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides a progress update on delivering the 25-26 internal audit plan, and it summarises the activity from April to November 2025. The recommendations that the committee are just asked to note progress in delivery of the 25-26 internal audit plan. So you'll see from item 4 in the report that our work in the first and second quarters of 25-26 was primarily focused on 3 main themes of work. I will now briefly describe each of these pieces of work in turn, and I'll start with the audit of the Organisational Improvement Programme Governance Review, which is item 6 on your report. So as the committee will be aware, the Organisational Improvement Programme, or OIP as it is known, is a structured transformation programme of improvements across the combined authority's operations, culture and ways of working. The work completed through the programme sets out to demonstrate the organisational effectiveness and maturity needed for the combined authorities to achieve established authority status and in turn bring greater impact to the region. Our internal audit work, therefore, focused on governance, including risk management and decision making, and the audit was completed during the summer of 2025. At the time of our review, the OIP was in its early stages, but notwithstanding this, the audit found the programme to be effectively designed and structured to ensure delivery of its stated objectives. We only made a small number of low and medium risk recommendations within our review, and these were accepted by senior management and quickly implemented. This positive response was indicative of the authority's engagement with us throughout the audit process and our work overall with them as a whole. Since the formal completion of the audit, we are continuing to attend meetings of the OIP board in an observer status and offer ongoing assurance work and consultancy on the programme as is required. We are also proposing further work in this area during the next financial year and will of course discuss and agree this with the committee in more detail once we formally begin the planning process for next year's audit plan. So now moving on to our work on grant certifications, which is on page 105 of the report pack. So members of the committee will be aware that the central government grant funding, which is provided to the combined authority, must be subject to a detailed review by an independent accountant or auditor. The Internal Audit Service therefore undertake this work and will review and sign off millions of pounds worth of income for the combined authority. This grant certification work takes place throughout the year and new grants can be identified for review at any time. And at the time of reporting today, we have certified approximately 50% of the claims for this year, which total around about £17 million worth of income. The committee are assured that all the claims reviewed so far this year have complied with the necessary grant expenditure terms and conditions. And the final area we'd like to bring to the committee's attention is work that we've completed on following up on the previous year internal audit reports that were issued. And the purpose of that work is to ensure that all of the recommendations that were made within these reports have been implemented by their due dates. 10 audits in 24-25 have so far been subject to a follow-up, and a further 5 are also scheduled for follow-up for the end of 25-26. And again, we are pleased to confirm that the committee, confirm to the committee that our work found that all the recommendations which due to be actioned have indeed been implemented. So that concludes our update, but we're happy to take any questions or any comments.
Thank you, Pete. Who would like to open the questions? Councillor Harker.
Thank you, Pete, for your report. Yeah, just a quick question on the 2024-25 audits. That's on page 106. The audit titles for most of those are self-explanatory, really. But the one at the top, stepping up, I just wondered what was being audited under that one.
Sure. So the, do you want to take one, Alec, or shall I?
Yeah. So stepping up was completed last year. It was additional to the audit plan for 24-25. We reported that via verbal update to committee. I could confirm the date of when we did that. We looked at the grant funding that was provided to stepping up by the combined authority as part of the community support fund grant allocation, due diligence and grant allocation.
And by stepping up, do you mean a diversity programme?
Yeah, it's a community interest company within Bristol. I think.
Any more clarifications? Independent member Whitten.
Thanks. Just on page 102, with the status of the audits, so it doesn't appear that any have been completed in Q1, Q2. Were any intended to be completed in the original plan before it was rescheduled?
Thank you for the question. Yep, so we have completed the OIP, as I previously mentioned, which is a significant piece of work, and that was completed on behalf of the Chief Executive as requested, which we indeed did so as a priority. You'll see that there are 4 which are currently in progress. We've also completed, as is mentioned in the report, a significant amount of grant funding work and also our follow-ups as well. So from our perspective, the plan is on schedule as we would expect and due to be completed by the end of the year, as is indicated in the table.
Were any of those audits originally intended to be completed?
I think a couple of them were due to be completed, which were made way for the OIP, which was obviously a significant piece of work which had to be prioritised within the plan.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Simon?
I hadn't noticed in previous ones that an internal audit review of stepping up had been undertaken. Obviously, a high profile issue. What level of assurance did that in original audit give? Was it one of the higher ratings or one of the lower ratings?
Yeah, so that was actually issued as a briefing paper without an assurance opinion. It was an investigative piece of work rather than an assurance piece.
Wasn't assessed on the 4-point scale.
No, that's right.
Not all of our work is given a assurance opinion. So some of this is consultancy, some of it is advice, some of it is, as Alex just said, a non-opinion piece in that respect.
But if a non-assurance piece of work suggested that further work was needed as a detailed internal audit, would it have proceeded to that, to give an assurance rating?
Yeah, so there were no significant issues identified within this review. Anything which comes out that we would discuss with Solange as part of the overall process. But yeah, so there were no concerns coming out of that piece of work which was completed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. I have one question I'd like to raise. Where is health and safety within the combined authority actually in the timetable of audits, please?
I'd say that. So we did complete health and safety audits, I think as part of the 23-24 cycle of work. We followed up on that last year during 24-25, and that will come back as part of the discussions when we meet again with Solange and the heads of service and directorates for planning for next year.
Thank you. So I'd like to move that we note this report, and if everybody's asked the questions they want to. So, Councillor Tibashala, you want to come in with the last minute?
Yes, I love reading these papers, you see. So I'll take the opportunity. In here, there's the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. I remember just asking because this is one of the funds that is not ring-fenced. And for that reason, it was worth understanding what happens to those that are funded in terms of reducing the reliance, because I'm not sure if it's continued or if it's stopped. And the basis of that was that this fund would soon stop. And therefore, what is the mitigations that those that have been receiving it have kind of been robust so that we didn't start something that then collapses. So I was more interested in the risk management of stopping a fund, because that's what this fund is. It's non-ring fenced. So it may not necessarily be for your self-audit, but more for the team.
So are you okay if I come in now? It's
Yes.
just so you specifically asked for this item to come to audit committee. It's on the forward plan for March.
It is.
As a separate item, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So can we move to note? Everybody happy to move to note this report? I think we can consider it noted. Now we move on to audit findings and the approval of the financial statements. And to receive and note the audit findings report for the year ending March 2025, and to approve the annual audited statements accounts for 2024-25 and the letter of representation. The following are attached: the audit findings report, the statement of accounts, and the letter of representation. Peter Barber, Steve Finnegan, and Solange Russell are going to be all speaking to this item according to my script. So shall we start with Pete Barber, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. So as you say, Chair, this is our audit findings report for 24-25, setting out the outcome of our audit of your financial statements. You'll note that the report on the agenda is dated late November, and at that stage, our work was substantially complete. Pleased to be able to report to committee that in the intervening period, we have now concluded the outstanding areas of work, and there is no further issues that I need to bring to the attention of this committee. You will see a summary of the findings set out commencing on page 116 under headlines. Importantly for this committee, our work has not identified any material errors in the draft accounts. I think it's fair to say that it has been a challenging audit this year, and I think that reflects the raising of the bar that takes place every year in terms of the level of challenge that we make of your numbers, and that has required a sustained response and extra information from officers. There are a large number of changes that have been made to the accounts, and they're detailed in detailed report, but I think that needs to be contextualised against that fact that there are no material errors, either individually and cumulatively, and actually a large number of those changes to the revised accounts were presentational and within the notes as opposed to the primary statements. And importantly, again, the fact that actually those changes have no impact on the outturn position for the combined authority. So the work has taken slightly longer than we initially envisaged. We were probably very optimistic at the outset, but we are here in early December. And the plan is that subsequent to the approval of the accounts, subject to the approval of the accounts, the signed letter of representation, getting the final confirmation of signatures, that we are hoping, if we can get across the road, to issue the opinion this afternoon. So you will have an opinion, a clean, unqualified opinion on your accounts on the 8th of December, significantly ahead of the backstop deadline of the end of February. So I think that this committee, you are those charged with governance, you can take assurance that the combined authority continues to have effective arrangements in place for producing complete, accurate and timely accounts. Now, when I do issue that opinion, I issue it to say that the accounts are materially accurate. There is a draft of the opinion wording that you will need to slot into your final version of your accounts, and that's on page 213 of the papers. The more observant of you amongst members will have read that whilst I will be issuing an opinion, I will not be certifying completion of the audit and issuing my certificate. We are not issuing any certificates at the moment across the public sector until we've completed our work in relation to the whole government accounts, and we need to wait for the National Audit Office to indicate that they're happy that there's no further work required. But you'll also note that the other reason why we're keeping the certificate open is because we are still considering communications from members of the public, plural. We have received an objection, and we've received a further 3 other communications from members of the public that we are treating as matters brought to our attention. That work is very well progressed now, and that's enabled me to conclude that there are no issues that would materially impact on the accounts, hence the opinion, but I do still need to complete that work before I can finalise the auditor's annual report and issue the certificate. Clearly the objection, whilst well progressed, once we have a view, will need to be routed through public sector audit appointments for comment. That does take some time, so I expect that work will run in early into the new year, but I will continue to make all efforts to ensure that is resolved as quickly as possible. So that is a summary, Chair, of the position. With your permission, I'm just going to briefly hand over to Becky, who will just take you through some of the key areas that we looked at and the main findings. So over to you, Becky.
Thank you. Yep, so I'll draw out a couple of the key points from the report. So first on materiality. So when we presented the audit plan in April, materiality was set at 4.1 million based on prior year figures. A bit closer? Is that better? Yeah. It's fine. Yeah, sorry. So firstly, on materiality, when we presented the audit plan in April, materiality was set at 4.1 million based on prior year figures. At year end, we've revised that to 5.9 million, so reflecting the higher actual gross expenditure. Our performance materiality was 4.13 million and reporting threshold 295,000. So turning to significant risks, management override of controls, we've tested journals and accounting estimates. No inappropriate journals were identified, but we noted one segregation of duties weakness where an individual posted and approved their own journal. So that's included in our recommendations. Valuation of the pension liability. This remains a key estimate. We reviewed assumptions with our auditors expert and found them reasonable and within expected ranges, with minor disclosure inconsistencies being corrected and reflected in the adjustment schedule in the report. Implementation of IFRS 16. So this was a new area of focus this year as it marks the first year the authority has applied the standard on leases. IFRS 16 fundamentally changes how leases are recognised, bringing the authority's leases onto the balance sheet. We reviewed the authority's approach to identifying and recognising leases under the new requirements. And while adjustments were required for presentation and classification, there wasn't any material impact on the overall financial position. So the authority's work in implementing this standard provides good foundation for future years. Finally, while there were no material misstatements impacting the outturn, we did identify disclosure and classification corrections, particularly around grants and agency balances. These included misclassifications between capital and revenue, grants receipts in advance, errors in agency creditor balances, and adjustments to ensure accurate presentation. So improving the quality of these disclosures remains a priority, and we've raised recommendations to enhance those reconciliations and a quality review step for next year. I will pause there and hand back to Pete if there's any final comments.
So just if I may, Chair, finally from me, just to the important issue of fees. So if I can refer members to page 162 of your papers, you will see that there is some proposed fee variations, some of which we have already submitted to PSAA for approval, and clearly any variations against fee will be subject to their checks, recognising that the final quantum will only be decided once we've concluded our audit and issued that certificate. But minded to leave it there, Chair, but no doubt there will be questions and happy to take them as appropriate.
Thank you, Pete. Any questions for Grant Thornton, please? Councillor Dibashala.
Thanks, Chair. Just on that last point about contractor control, has there been any testing or full, an appointment of a contractor? Sorry, has there been any testing to ensure that your recommendations can be actually implemented?
Are you able, sorry, Councillor, are you able to clarify where in our report that is referenced? Is it?
No, I'm just going on the lady's last comment in terms of the error in terms of the classification errors that you mentioned. How often or for how many years have you seen that kind of going back, and what does it actually mean? You kind of highlighted it, but what does it mean when you have all those clarifications?
So these are presentation adjustments that we've identified. So there's no impact on the outturn. It's within the disclosure notes of the grants that they're moving between the grants that they've been recognised against, essentially.
So is the classification of those funds not being appropriately allocated?
Yes, basically. So it's a mapping error, essentially. So when pulling together the accounts, then the ledger is showing it as a different grant than it actually is.
Then another one. Okay.
Have you got anything to add to that, or do you?
No, I'm just picking up. So obviously, depending on how many classification errors you have, you end up having a huge potential of miscalculation for different pots. Is that right? I'm just trying to understand what is the impact of classification errors on just overall accounting.
So the requirement for the combined authority is to ensure that the accounts reflect the code of audit practice, and they will have certain descriptors and narratives that can be used for the primary statement. So within the balance sheet, there will be certain reserves and balances, and there will be different types of reserves that relate to grants received and how they can be treated. In year, in the comprehensive income and expenditure account, there will be different disclosures of different types of expenditure. And the issue that we've identified, or issues plural, were in terms of the categorization of those for the purposes of producing the accounts for the combined authority. So what we're not saying is that fundamentally there's figures that are wrong for internal purposes when it comes to monitoring programs, etc. We've not reviewed that. We've reviewed what is in your ledger. We looked at your ledger, satisfied ourselves that everything that is happening within the combined authority is captured within that ledger. We're looking at how that ledger has been used to produce a trial balance and how that then ties into the accounts. And through that substantive testing, we've identified some categorization issues that clearly we've recommended are addressed going forward. But individually and cumulatively, those are not material to the reader of the accounts in terms of that, what those figures show in terms of the workings of the combined authority. So I think you can nonetheless take comfort that they weren't material to a reader who's picking up those accounts for the first time.
Yeah, it's just an accounting error that needs to be solved. Okay, thanks.
One more question?
Yeah. Can you elaborate a bit more on this green governance? I think, was that inadequate in terms of the green governance, inadequate for multiple years? Is there anything around that green governance? Sorry, these are my notes from last night, so I'm not looking at the document anymore.
So I don't know if you're referring to the sorry, Councillor, I'm not exactly.
I can come back to you directly.
I'm happy to take that offline if that's
okay.
If there is a further question you have, but it's not immediately jumping out of me in terms of where that's covered in the report.
That's all right. It's a lengthy document. I'll refer back.
You ready?
Yeah, check. So no more questions for Grant Thornton? Oh, Councillor Simon.
It's actually more a question for management. It refers to page 150 about authorising journals. I've always been very sensitive to this ever since a big fraud on my previous authority. So I just wanted assurance that the management response is now in place. Those actions are there.
Yes, we have implemented an additional system control rec monthly, which reviews all journals. The journal it happened during a crossover of roles. So the system controls are in place now, yes.
So somebody had changed role and therefore they had both also.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. And
did you have
Thank you. My question was basically the same as Councillor Simon's question, and based on the information that we have, I think I'm comfortable in approving the accounts.
would Solange or Steve like to talk to the accounts before we approve them?
So the draft accounts did come here before. We took a number of questions previously. We've accommodated the adjustments that were put forward to us by Grant Thornton, and I think we're at the position with whether you're happy to approve or not.
Okay. So we'd like to note the audit findings report and approve the audited statement of accounts 24-25 and the letter of representation. So can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Hucker and Councillor Simon, would you like to second it? Thank you. And so votes against the audited statement of accounts and the letter of representation. Those that want to abstain and those that want to for the statement of accounts and the letter of representation. Thank you very much.
Sorry, can I just say something, Chair? Is that all right?
Certainly.
I just want to put on record, and I know I did this last year, but I just want to put on record again, thanks to the MCA team and Grant Thornton. It's a huge piece of work, and to do this ahead of the backstop date, February, is a great achievement. So thank you.
Indeed, I would like to endorse that. Thank you.
Can I also add that I think it looks to me like an example of good professional collaboration to test the classifications and the other data and to improve the accounts by collaboration, and that's what audit should be for.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. It's been proposed that we take a short break before we go for the next 3 items on the agenda. So I propose that we break for 5 minutes and then return at 12:07, please. hopefully resume. Everybody's in the room. We give them another minute. Excellent. So we can now move on to the next item, which is health and safety update. To provide the Audit Committee with a general health and safety update for the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority, Ben Mosley will be giving this report.
Thank you, Chair. So the report highlights actions which have been taken in the last 12 months following up from an internal audit report from 2023. You can see in the key considerations section the amount of work which has been undertaken by the health and safety team, and in fairness, under Bob Brown's leadership, as the team was within his directorate during the time. I am pleased to say that significant progress has been made in all areas, and it's important just to remind committee members that the Combined Authority is responsible for 2 buildings, 70 Redcliffe Street and also Davis House, and significant work has also been done there. We are going to be reviewing and undertaking a further review of health and safety in relation to both buildings. In recent weeks, we've been made aware of an issue regarding our fire capacity for the building, and we'll be working through the implications for that to ensure that we can ensure that colleagues can work from the building safely and at maximum capacity.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions about this particular item? Councillor Self.
Yes, so do you have safety reps as part of the organisation? In other words, do employees feed into your health and safety stuff? And when was the last fire evacuation exercise? And in terms of that evacuation, do you have fire marshals? Do you do a register? And finally, is a working alone policy?
So we do have fire marshals. The last fire evacuation exercise happened 2 weeks ago. We have produced a lesson learned report from that, as we do with every fire evacuation drill we do. We do have a lone working policy as well, and that's both for colleagues who work within the building who may be working in spaces which, particularly in Davis House, for example, where there may be only 1 or 2 colleagues working there, but also colleagues working from home as well. So we do risk assessments, so those types of things. And I'm sorry, your first question was?
I think it was about safety reps. Do you have union representation?
We do.
Yeah.
So we regularly speak to unions and have meetings with union representatives. And we also encourage all colleagues not just to wait for the formal meetings to come through. So we've got a very active workplace culture where when issues are identified, they are brought forward directly to the health and safety team. They are logged and then addressed. So we do very much an approach of you said we did to this. So, and that's an ongoing matter because, of course, we're dealing with human beings, and issues do arise within the building. So we do ensure that there's a log, and we do record what we've done.
Thank you. Any more questions? So I'd like to move that we note this report then, please. Consider this report noted.
Thank you.
Now we move on to the quarterly corporate risk register review. And to present the corporate risk register, which is a standing item every quarter, and Abby Evans will be introducing it.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, and hello to members. I'm pleased to introduce the quarterly update of the Corporate Risk Register. This report forms part of our ongoing commitment to proactive and transparent risk management, and it provides an up-to-date assessment of the key strategic risks that are currently facing the Mayoral Combined Authority. The review has been completed in line with our current corporate risk framework that was approved by the West of England Combined Authority Committee in July 2024 and endorsed by this committee in March of this year. This framework sets out the MCA's approach to identifying, assessing and managing our risks and ensures that our processes remain structured, consistent and robust. While the framework is due for its next refresh in March 2026, work has already begun under the direction of our corporate leadership team to strengthen and evolve our risk management arrangements in response to an increasingly complex operating environment. And that includes refinement to our risk categories, appetite statements, and undertaking deep dive reviews across directorates. We're developing clearer parameters for applying risk appetites and introducing opportunity risks for the first time. And to support members' continued engagement, we've scheduled a dedicated risk workshop for early in February. This will provide an opportunity for members to brief you on those key developments ahead of our formal refresh in March 2026. So today's report summarises the latest quarterly review of our corporate risk register, and that analysis is informed by 9 underpinning directorate risk registers that ensures comprehensive coverage of the MCA. As you will be aware, there has been a recent leadership restructure, and so that has reshaped some of the ownership and accountability of our risks within the CRR. While the review process has continued as business as usual during this transition, we are now working to align those registers with the new organisational structure, with those changes to be reflected in the next quarterly cycle that you see. In this quarter's register, we've got 9 live corporate risks reported. This includes 1 new risk relating to Bristol Temple Quarter Programme, BTQ, as you may be familiar with, is one of the largest city centre regeneration schemes delivered through our limited liability partnership between the MCA, Homes England and Bristol City Council. Key areas of risk relate to programme delivery, cost management and funding continuity. 1 risk has closed since last quarter, that's CRR 16, relating to public transport operational costs, including supporting bus services and potentially exceeding that current budget. That has been closed, but is being materialised, and as it's being materialised, it's being actively managed. All risks continue in the high range for mitigation, but only 3 remain high after mitigation. There is an error in the report on page 331, which states that risk CRR 14, the CRSTS residual score of 12, is actually 16 at the point of analysis in November, and I need to hold my hand up for that error, so apologies for the discrepancy. This will be corrected in the minutes. The registers are live, we are constantly reviewing them. There's a formal reporting lag, so I think we're seeing a reduction in that risk rating due to mitigations and controls, effectively reducing the impact and probability of the CRSTS risk. But for formal reporting procedures at the point of November, that was 16 residual score rating after controls have been applied. So the report also highlights several important updates to individual risks, including those relating to CRSTS delivery, which Chris spoke about earlier in the agenda, and workforce capacity and resilience as well. And there has been a separation of the cyber and business continuity risks to ensure clearer oversight and more targeted action. Finally, we've aligned each risk to the MCA's organisational priorities set out in the 25-26 business plan, and notably 6 of the 9 corporate risks relate to organisational capacity and capability. This reinforces the central importance of our ongoing organisational improvement programme in strengthening our ability to deliver for the region. Chair, I will pause there. I'm happy to take questions or expand on any of the key changes or observations from this report. And I'm delighted to say that I have got some directors and colleagues in the room if there's specific questions that you need today to respond to.
Thank you, Abby. Who would like to open in the questioning? Councillor Self.
First of all, I'm interested in who takes part in the risk assessments at the sort of lower level. And secondly, the risk of cybercrime, you say the trend is going down. That does concern me because we've seen some very large organisations be attacked and suffer significant disruption. So I just want some reassurance on that particular risk that it is in fact going down as you suggest.
Okay. If you like, as long as it's okay.
I was going to reinforce that the view that CR4 is set too low. It's cybercrime is enabled often by accidents, by individuals, by people being seduced into doing things they shouldn't have done. So it's often only a partially mitigatable risk. And I'd like to join Councillor Self in suggesting that that be reviewed.
I would like to endorse that as well. Who would like to come in on this one?
So I'll ask Mark if that's okay.
Certainly we can review that particular item just to give the committee greater assurance. I mean, the mitigations are in there, and we've obviously moved to a new provider which has enhanced cyber security. We now have that provided by Dell, so that was one of the key elements in terms of the renewed service provision that we wanted, and extra capacity in that we have a forum now that for staff more broadly to ensure that we pick up cybersecurity issues, and our communications have improved on that. We also have a digital strategy that's coming forward that has at its core cybersecurity, which should improve that further, but we're happy to re-review that and at the next iteration of this for the next committee, ensure that whatever the mitigations are and the scores are appropriate.
Shall I take the first question as well? I think there was one before we focus on cybercrime around the levels of assessment. So how do they escalate to the corporate risk register? So our framework identifies the roles and responsibilities of risk within the organisation, but essentially we adopt a 3 lines of defence model. So the first line of defence is the creation and the monitoring of our directorate risk registers, which are owned by directors and heads of service actively input. So all risks are assigned to an individual, and through our normal management performance processes, risks are captured and scored in line with the framework. But the second line of defence is the corporate leadership team. So CLT review these before it reaches this forum to look at all the high level risks for awareness, and then we decide what ultimately should be on the corporate risk register for in the public realm to see what our top level risks are for the organisation. And the third line, of course, is that independent assurance and the audit committee provides and our auditors provide as well. There is also a corporate risk review group with representatives across the whole organisation so that we can collaborate and assure our risks so they're not just being viewed from one perspective. So there's been a huge amount of work in strengthening our risk framework so that we can review our risks and that everybody knows what their responsibility as staff members. And we've had e-learning training to help officers to identify risks, and that continues to happen so that you can see the risks that ultimately escalate up to the corporate risk register that you're viewing today.
The reason I asked that one is because whenever I've done risk analysis in the past, then the more diverse voices you get in that process, the better. So I was kind of interested in how it goes on by the sort of lowest level. Do you try to encourage employees from lots of different disciplines? And this is quite relevant to cybersecurity as well, because somebody who perhaps have been subject to a cyber incident might have some knowledge. So just trying to encourage more people as many people as possible to get involved in the process.
Really valid point, and we are doing lots in that area actively, particularly through the corporate risk review group. So there is a representative in each directorate if people want support with risk management, and for the training that is available on our We Learn training site that is open to all staff. And I think you'll see risk management through the framework development that we'll bring to you early next year, the other areas for embedding a risk culture and ensuring that everybody knows their role and responsibility in risk going forward. So there's always more we can do to improve that, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
At this point, I'd like to note that there is a cyber resilience update coming to the May meeting of this committee, or the summer meeting of this committee. I'd like to actually propose that we go into exempt session for that particular item, so that we can actually dig down to the deep and dirty weeds of that particular item, please. Also, CRR8, which is the Mayoral Combined Authorities Financial Resources Actions and Plans, do not fully address the climate and ecological emergencies, is going to be the subject of a deep dive in the March meeting. So we can get some more information on that. Does anybody have any more questions? Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question relates to CRR8. How does the change in the senior management leadership structure affect our ability to deliver our actions there?
I can take this. We're fully reviewing risk CRR at the moment internally. It was subject to discussion at corporate leadership team in the last few weeks to ensure alignment with the MCA's direct responsibilities and deliverables relating to climate and ecological emergencies. So because of the new ownership with risks, our placemaking and transport directors, John and Emma, are assigned ownership for that with the transition stage, and to ensure that climate resilience is reflected in our strategic planning. So what we hope to come back to you with next year is a comprehensive wording so we can review and talk in more detail about how that risk and the organisational impact of that risk rather than the wider regional outcomes. We need to focus on what is in our direct control was the discussion, and the aim is to come back in the new year with a comprehensive paper so that we can give you the latest developments along with a clearer rationale for any proposed changes to that risk.
Thank you. Councillor Tirpeshala.
Yes, hi. Going back to the discussion around TQ, I just wanted to check here because there's the notes that where is it? Where am I here again? There we go. A meeting will take place in November with the aims of securing positive outcomes for partnership core funding. We're in December. I wonder if is that confirmation that that funding has been secured, and therefore this at the point of writing this document, that situation has changed.
So I'd like to invite John Wilkinson to come up to the mic to answer that, because he looks like he's very keen to answer it.
Thank you for the question. So I'm John Wilkinson. I'm the Director of Place within the Combined Authority. So I sit on the BTQ board with the other partners. No, the funding is not yet confirmed. We have a board meeting this week where we will get a further update on how the conversations with Homes England have gone. We continue to push that conversation forward at every opportunity. And we had a strategic place partnership board meeting with Homes England just a couple of weeks ago where we have listed it as one of our highest priorities.
I'm conscious of issues that may be beyond the control in terms of viability challenges. And I'm just wondering in terms of this risk, because maybe I haven't seen a lot of the risk registers, but it's the first time I'm seeing this risk. Therefore highlighting that, is this an immediate risk that's just popped up, or is it something that's been bubbling across and has now kind of reached this high risk approach? But what's happened in between that if it's just popping up at this point?
So I joined the authority in July in this current role. So I've taken the opportunity to review all of our regeneration programs, and as part of that review, we've collectively determined that this should be at the, on the corporate risk register. I think what's also happened is that we are moving, or the LLP is moving from a strategy phase into a delivery phase. So we're about to announce the appointment of our private sector partner. So clearly, once they are on board, we're getting into serious delivery. The planning permission's just been granted for the new transport hub. The new entrance is completed. So we're very much moving into a delivery phase where much of the grant that has been allocated will start to be spent in earnest. So we feel because of that it's right that we put it onto the risk register at this level, at this stage.
Yeah, it's great to see, because it has been one of those, when do we ever hear or know anything about it, because it's just across from us. So thanks very much for raising this issue and putting this onto the agenda. It's very transparent of you, and welcome to your role. My other question is more really around workforce. And we've had the awareness in terms of the lack of diversity within the team. And I'm just wondering, what are the clear plans to mitigate this? And you know, in terms of increasing the level of diversity in the workforce, is this a significant challenge that is now on the risk register in terms of that sense, or?
So I'm quite sure it's been on there on previous
Yes,
iterations.
it has been. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
but
yes.
I'm going to ask Ben, our Director of Operations, to comment, if that's okay. Thanks.
Well, you're all here. Great.
Yeah.
So this is a really important question, and it is a question which we will be answering through our target operating model and our approach to workforce strategy. So, you know, we look at our data for our workforce. We recognise it's quite young, but it's certainly not representative of the region. And we need to look at our recruitment approach to how we attract the right people, but also we're an organisation which accurately reflects our region. And I think it's safely to say that we're not there yet, but we are very much aware of the challenge. Through our operating model, we will be putting forward a workforce strategy, and with that will be looking at all our recruitment processes to ensure that we attract people from a diverse range of backgrounds.
Sorry, Chair. Thanks for that. I think what's always important when looking at elements of recruitment, diversity, and inclusion within any workforce is really understanding the hierarchy and pay gaps and where current staff is. It'd be great to actually get a detailed approach of where you are to understand where you're trying to go and which part of your departments are more concentrated, more diverse, and why is that versus the areas that are not. We see the same picture with many other local authorities and many other corporate partners. So I think a bit more understanding of really what is your challenges and where they are, and your pay gaps, I think would really help for that transparency. Thank you.
And we would welcome the focus on that, and we'll be happy to bring a report forward on that.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Because I've got a question. The West Innovation Arc, which is the delivery of lots more jobs and homes around based around the Filton Airfield and either side of it, is coming. How long will that take to form a risk on the risk register about the delivery of those homes, please?
So at the moment with the West Innovation Arc, it's mooted to be one of the 12 new towns, but Homes England are going through a process of evaluating all of those bids at the moment, or proposals. We won't know until the spring whether or not the West Innovation Arc will be entered onto that national programme. So we are gearing up to understand what the implications of that would be. I think it goes without saying that if we are one of those 12 with South Gloucestershire Council, then I imagine that would be a significant risk that would be entered onto the risk register. At the moment, we don't know formally whether or not we will be part of that programme. So that's why it's not currently reflected on here.
Thank you for that clarification. Any more questions? So we're asked, Toby, do you have a question? No. The committee is asked to note and comment on the risk register, so I can think we've done that. So we'll move on to the proposal to review and amend the existing commercial guidance within the contract standing orders. This paper provides the rationale for revising the existing contract standing orders covering commercial and procurement guidance. The goal is to provide an overview to support the amending the current content related to procurement and commercial activities, which affects the operational processes of both the commercial team and the wider MCA staff. Elliot Williams is to introduce rather.
Good morning all. Elliot Williams, Head of Commercial. Actually, afternoon, sorry, correct myself. Yeah, paper's
very quickly then introduce the paper. I think you've just given it a very good introduction. It is, like you said, minor amendments to the CSO and commercial governance. The enhancements bring a number of improvements. So alignment to the Procurement Act 23 threshold, increasing from 100k to 214. Good practice alignment to other public sector bodies, aligning our sort of commercial governance and thresholds in line with them. Creating a more agile and operational improvements in terms of our internal governance, making life a little bit easier for our officers to navigate. And then specifically, there's an exemption proposed for legal procurements due to some of the timescales involved with legal requirements and also some of the sensitivities. Then they're not subject to some of our governance papers. And I think that covers it. So welcome questions.
Anybody like to ask any questions? Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Chair. It was just in relation to the amounts and the requirements associated with those in terms of authorisations and the procedures for tender and so on. What checks and processes will be put in place to protect against disaggregation of contracts, either to drop them down to a lower band or to prevent them going up into sort of get 3 tenders? So where particularly those ones which are maybe on the boundaries, or alternatively the very low level where it could just be dropped out into the card up below £500. What checks will take place just to make sure that there's, you know, what's being put forward is suitable, is not being put into 2 or 3, 4 smaller packages?
No, that's a good question. That's something we've corrected. There's as per the table in Appendix A, there's several thresholds of governance. So the lowest level, I've got 2 procurement officers in my team that at the point that purchase orders become to raise, that they check the requirements. So if it's only 1 quote required, there's a procurement request form, contract award form. They check that documentation comes forward with the PO request. So there's that level, and at that point we can monitor disaggregation. Anything from the threshold, previously 25k, now 30k, up to the new threshold of 214 gets signed off by myself as head of commercial and also head of finance. So we also double check and we see that as a trend. So that comes through that. It also comes through a layer of my senior procurement leads who also review it and sense check it and provide commentary before it comes to me on the relevant forms. And then above the 214 threshold, that comes to commercial board, which has a number of directorates from across the business, plus myself in the board, and then other members of the team that come to. So we capture at that level as well. So there is, and I suppose the final thing is I provide a quarterly compliance report to the CLT, showing at each of those 3 thresholds what our performance is in terms of compliance and what we've and what level of governance has been applied, basically. So.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Yeah,
Councillor Tibishala.
Thanks. Seeing that you're changing something that this hasn't been changed for a while, right? You're proposing a new approach, correct?
Yeah, we funnily enough, it was nearly a year ago that we took the CSO to Audit Committee previously, but that was for the full onboarding of the Procurement Act 2023, which came into effect in February. But yeah, this is a minor tweak to some of the governance. Yeah.
Okay. So at which point would you like to review your suggested agile approach just to explore what risks have kind of been not in scope, but then have kind of creeped in terms of just general project creep approach of this new approach? Do you have any of that milestone?
Yeah, I think going back to the previous explanation of the level of governance we have at each of those thresholds, because of the compliance reporting that we take to CLT on a quarterly basis, naturally the first review from the point of implementation and approval, if it does get approval, would be the next milestone that we take that to CLT. The addition to that is I would probably push like a continuous review so that we can see it as it comes through and hopefully get warnings before we get to that milestone. But yeah, the quarterly point.
The quarterly point.
Yeah.
And then at which point would you want to do a complete, in-depth, comprehensive review to then say this approach works, or there's still some tweaks that needs to be done?
I think we could, yeah, at that point, if there is stuff that is of concerning, or there is a risk, then I think we're fluid enough that we can perhaps, or agile enough that we can propose further amendments or tweaks. I'm not preempting that will be the case, but yeah, it would be a good opportunity to review that.
Thank you.
So independent member Whitten.
Sorry, just a final question. Has there been an internal audit of procurement since the new procurement regulations?
Apologies. So you mean under the procurement regulations in terms of PA 23? So we have a number of big procurements underway that are under procurement, but they're not completed. A lot of the procurements we've done, I don't know the split, would be subject to PCR 2015.
We'll ask internal audit to come in if that's okay.
Yeah, so we completed internal audit on preparedness for the new regulations and new system that was being implemented to support that. So we completed that last year, and we'll again discuss when we do our reasonable assurance planning for procurement to be involved for sample testing of procurements next year.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I've got one item of clarification I'd like to confirm. Would this process cover a short-term personnel contract?
Yeah, it covers all procurement contracts. There is some labour that we procure is subject to HR regulation rather than the Procurement Act, but yeah, consultants and stuff like that. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have to recommend this report. Can I have a mover, please? Proposer. Councillor Simon, a seconder. Councillor Blenkinsop. So the recommendation I will take on block because there's 5 of them. It's rather a long piece of text. So can I have votes against recommending this? Votes abstaining? And votes for to recommend this, please. Thank you very much. And last but by no means least, we have the forward work plan. Solange, would you like to speak to this one? Oh, Tim and Mill and Solange.
Yes, thanks, Chair. This is the forward work plan for the committee going forward. It's the next 4 meetings up to this time next year are listed. We got a fair number of items listed for the March meeting, and also there are a number of informal briefings that have been scheduled for the committee that are in the diary, and members should have had diary appointments sent out for them. I believe there was a couple of items raised earlier in the meeting that members wished to be added. There was a 6-month update on the expansion of the authority, so we can add that for the summer. And you asked for the cybersecurity update to be held in the closed session as well. So just opening it up to the committee just for any changes or any additions or even deletions they wish to see to the forward work plan, please.
Thank you, Tim. Any questions or clarifications needed on that? Councillor Tibishala.
Yes. Please correct me if I'm wrong. At which point is the mayor's corporate strategy and implementation plan, which we can then look at the goals being achieved by the mayor? Does that fit into any of these, so we can really get an idea what the goal and the ambition is versus the operational stuff?
Jeff, I think that's more of a role for overview and scrutiny.
Okay.
And then in terms of the framework for assurance, that's your bag. But the detail in that, the sort of policy element, is overview and scrutiny.
With a scrutiny.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we note that.
One thing, you earlier we talked about North Somerset joining. Did you want to add the a review, a check-in or something in maybe summer? Yeah, you got that ready? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. So one final point is if you could notify me by email about any points you particularly want me to recommend to the next main committee, which happens on the 30th of January. If you could email me, I believe you all have my address. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for coming and for all the officers providing such diligent and detailed reports. It's much appreciated. Thank you. I think Solange would like to also
Just to
interfere.
echo, it's been a big agenda today. It's been extended. There were a lot of items that we got through. So I really want to thank all the authors and all those who presented today. So thank you very much.
And I'd like to also wish everybody a Merry Christmas, because I think it's that time of the year. And we can also meet with the external auditors directly after this meeting if they do so, people so wish.
Where is it?
Room 20 armchair.
Which is where? All right, okay, upstairs.
I'll take you.
Thank you.